Hello, welcome everybody to a basics culinary class. Tonight we're going to make some pasties. So please ask some questions if you would like at our Q&A window. Um, and let's get into it. Pasties are a type of hand pie. We see hand pies all around the world, and like empanadas, pierogies, samosas, but pasties are the British version, and they came about. They're traced to Cornwall, and sometimes you hear the term Cornish pasties, and in Cornwall there's a big mining community, and miners would take the pasties down into the mines and have them for a meal. So the dough, it was really important for the dough to be sturdy and also have some integrity to hold warm. Some pasties were said to be able to stay warm for up to 10 hours, and then they would actually set them on their lamps to warm them up again if they did cool down. And in Cornwall, a little while back, they actually got a designation for what can be considered a Cornish pasty, and it is can only consist of beef, onions, what is a swede or a rutabaga, and carrots, potato, salt and pepper, and that is a Cornish pasty. So anything else is a little bit different than that, and our filling has a little bit of cheese and some nice sauces to give it a little bit of flavor, more flavor also. But there's many varieties. We'll talk more about fillings in a minute, but I'd like to get right into the dough. So if you are cooking along tonight, which is an option, the way it might work best is we'll make the dough and we'll go through that, and then you're going to chill your dough for a half an hour. And while you're chilling your dough, I'll be making this filling and talking about the fillings, and you can work on the filling also. But of course, don't watch and use a knife at the same time, please. So, but take it easy. But theoretically, you could have pasties for dinner tonight if you're tuning in and cooking along. So the dough you can make even a day ahead. So if you want to make the dough tonight and make pasties tomorrow, that can work great. So I'm going to make the dough, and then you're going to chill it for half an hour. So the pasty dough here, it's basically a pie dough, and our basics pie dough recipe, which is available on the basicsmarket.com site, is really great for this, and that's an all butter dough. That will work fine. This pasty dough I developed, I just thought it was interesting to incorporate the lard. Traditionally, lard was in pasty dough, and it does add a certain sturdiness to it once it's cooked. So here I have 3 ounces of lard and then 3 ounces of butter, and I'm using the Lulabelle's butter. This is our own brand of butter that just came out like last month, and it's really nice. We have salted and unsalted. For this, we're going to use unsalted because we're adding salt to the mix. So a dough like this, it's really simple. It's flour, some sort of fat, and water, and a little bit of salt. You could do this dough vegan. There's a lot of great vegan butters out there, and so if you're looking to do the vegetarian version, the vegan version of this with the jackfruit, you can make a vegan dough as well. Just substitute your favorite vegan butter. We have a whole bunch of them at the markets that are really interesting. They're made out of all kinds of different materials. So the flour, also, you could use different flours. I'm using all-purpose. This is just Bob's Red Mill local all-purpose flour. It's good for all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to put 3 cups of flour into a bowl. And then we're going to add 2 pinches of salt. And I'm using, my favorite salt is just a kosher salt, and I can really get good pinches of that. So 2 nice pinches of salt. And then we just want to mix the salt and the flour together. And then I should mention that the butter and the lard, I chilled a bit. It's nice to have chilled butter when you're making a pie dough or a pasty dough. What creates those sort of flaky layers is the butter molecules layering in between the flour molecules, and that's where you get your layer, your nice flakiness. So here I'm cutting it in, and I'm using this as a really neat tool. I use this for pie dough all the time. This is a pastry cutter. There is another kind of thing that is sometimes called a pastry cutter, sometimes called a bench knife. This is also really handy for any sorts of dough, and this works well here too. Just use this. You just have 1 blade instead of several, and you can see this one. This is kind of a cheap one, and it's all bent up from use. So there's better ones out there, but this is the one I've got, and it works all right. And also your fingers work well. And if you're using, I usually use one hand and then also the cutter, and sort of break all that butter and lard up. And you're just looking to get sort of a sandy consistency here. Okay, so just mixing in, and what is happening is all the butter is coating the flour, and it starts to feel a little bit like sand. So the next step is adding the ice water, and again, where the water iced is good for keeping that butter from melting on us. And speaking of ice, in that freezer, if you would, kind sir, there's some ice, and it's good to get the thing that I forgot over with early. There's always the one thing, and that's my special trademark. So there it was. And so just having, and what I usually do is put a bunch of ice in a jug or something. Here's a measuring cup. And I don't worry too much about the measurement here. I just want the water to be really cold, and that'll do it. And then I measure the water after. And this is not set in stone. You may need to make adjustments depending on your fat you're using and on the flour. And so once you get the hang of what you want your pasty dough to feel like, you can adjust the water accordingly. But I mean, we'll use at least this cup and a quarter, I believe here. So I'm gonna start in slow, and you just want to kind of drizzle it in there, and we're just trying to get all the dough ingredients moistened at this point. And you just want to do a little at a time like that. Check, see where you're at, and maybe, who knows, we might not need all the water. It could go either way, and and it usually does. It goes one way or the other. All right, so that was the cup. So now let's go ahead, and here's the quarter cup. And here I'm going to kind of go around the edge, and I think it will take that quarter cup. And you're looking for your dough to just start to stick together, okay? And that's what we're doing, and that's what it's starting to do. And you don't want to add too much liquid, or it'll get really sticky, and also it will tend to be a little bit tough. Now, with like an ordinary pie crust, I'm a little more worried about handling it and creating a tough texture because by creating gluten. But with the pasties, I'm not as concerned because I want it to hold up a little bit because we're going to be rolling it, we're going to be crimping it, and then taking it down into the mine or out into the forest or wherever you're headed. And so you want it's okay if it's a little bit sturdy. Now the miners often didn't even eat all their dough. They used it more as a handle because they were handling dangerous materials. Like in Cornwall, they mostly, it's like in the 1800s, they mostly mined metals, including arsenic. And so they put a nice big handle on the pasty so that the miners could eat around their hand. And then what they would do is they'd leave the scraps of pastry, the pasty crust, out for the spirits of the mine, and so it was sort of an offering of sorts. But this way they wouldn't get the poisonous dust into their food. And sometimes they'd have like savory fillings, part, 3/4 of the way down, and then like a nice little treat, like some maybe apple pie filling or pudding or something at the very end. And so they could have like a meal and then a little dessert. And that's kind of cool. So here we go. This is sort of what we're looking at. It's all together. And you don't want to handle it too much. I'm playing around, and I should not. We want to make sure it has those flaky layers, so I don't want to squish those. So at this juncture, a piece of plastic is really handy with dough, pasty dough or pie dough. And you just want to wrap it nice and tight. And then I usually kind of press down on it just to get all the air pockets out, smooth it out a little bit, and leave it like that. And this I'll be cutting in 12 pieces, right, for 12 pasties. And that's it. So we chill this dough, and so I'm going to do that. And so while your dough is chilling, you can work on the filling. So tonight, I'd like to go through the beef pasty filling, which is more towards the traditional Cornish pasty. It could almost qualify as a Cornish pasty in Cornwall, except I did add the Worcestershire sauce and the steak sauce, which is really a common ingredients throughout Britain. So it is quite traditional, but it wouldn't qualify necessarily. Also, the cheese as a Cornish pasty. So the pasty dough recipe, it's available on our website, and if you click on the pasty recipe, you'll get the beef filling, the vegan jackfruit filling, and this pasty dough filling, or pasty dough. So look there for that. And let's move forward with the filling. Let me grab a cutting board. So the miners, the Cornish miners in the 1800s, many people had to immigrate from Cornwall to look for work, and what there was many miners who liked to eat these pasties, and so they left Cornwall, they left Britain, and they went all over the world. So you see, there in Mexico, not only is there the empanada, which is like the native pasty, but there's something that is spelled just paste, and I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but it's probably something like pasty, and it is a direct descendant of the pasty, and looks like it and has really similar ingredients. You'll find versions all over the place though, and it's because these miners just spread out. And wherever there are mines, so like around this one area of Mexico where there's a lot of mining, that's where this pasty showed up. So it's kind of cool how they took it and introduced it, and you'll see it a lot. Pasties are really popular, like in Michigan, in America, and that's where a lot of the Cornish miners ended up. In Cornwall, they say anywhere there's a mine, you'll find a Cornish miner at the bottom, and that's probably true. All right, so let's first let's get the veggies sauteing, right? So at the on the website there are the recipes, and then of course in the stores we have all these really neat and pretty recipe cards that are you can just grab if you would like. And so here I have the pie dough one we're putting next to the pasty recipe this month, because like I said, it works really well for this, and this is just an all butter deal. And then I've got the beef and the vegan fillings as well. So let's go ahead and look at the beef. So we're going to go ahead and start with melting 2 tablespoons of butter. And I have 2 tablespoons cut here. And we'll put that in a skillet. So both of these recipes are designed for a 10-inch skillet, as far as what you'll need to cook them, the volume. So think, anything similar, a similar size pan or something bigger will work great. And then I always like to just go through dicing an onion. It's a wonderful skill to keep practicing. And if you need to look at other kind of dicing and slicing skills and stuff, we have some things online that speak to different techniques with knife skill techniques. But let's look at the onion. So I'm going to grab my knife. I have an 8-inch chef knife here, and find that balance point, the fulcrum between the handle and the blade. And first I cut the stem end off. So this is the end of the onion that goes up, and the stem is attached. And then here's the root end. And we're going to go ahead and just slice, hopefully, right through the root end, and cut that onion in half. And then the handy compost bowl. It's good to have one of those on your countertop while you work, and your onion peel will come right off. Both of these. And then to dice, so the onion has these lines, and we're going to cut in the same direction as those lines, and that facilitates a very nice dice. All right, so this one, and with these pasties, you want to go kind of slow. On this recipe, I put 1/2-inch dice, and you could go smaller, or just sort of as long as everything's sort of in the same size range, because it will cook at the same rate that way. And so this is a neat way to cut an onion, because you can grab onto that root end to hold it, and also leaving that root attached keeps the onion together for you while you're slicing it and dicing it. Okay. So again, and with my left hand, I'm utilizing the claw, and the claw is just keeping your fingers a little bit tucked, stabilizing your vegetable. The keeping your fingers out of the way at the same time. And here I am holding that root and just chopping up the onion. All right, so now that's our diced onion. Pop that in the pot there. And I have some garlic that I minced up before we started. So this is 2 garlic cloves. Throw that in as well. And what else do we have? We've got a carrot. All right, so I started some carrot and potato, but I wanted to demo a little bit. So here's a half of a peeled carrot. One neat way to get into your carrot and keep it nice and safe for dice is to go ahead and just cut a little bit off of one side. So this is, you can see, just a real thin little strip. And you could either compost this or keep it for soup stock or throw it in your pasty mix. It's a little bit of a smaller dice. And what we're level side so that you're not going to roll around that so much. And then from here, we can cut down, and then we can create, then you've got a really good solid surface, and create some strips. And these, now we can cut into some small dice. Okay, and then from here, you can take a grouping, whatever you're comfortable with, and we're going to use that rocking motion. I have the tip of my knife down on the cutting board. I'm using the claw to hold the carrots together and just rocking through them. And here's the sort of dice we're looking for with the carrot. And here's the potato. I just peeled the potato and I have cut it in half. A similar technique where I took a little bit off, made a flat surface, cut it in half, and then I have 2 halves to work with. And just the same sort of deal. And there's more potato cutting. We did some potato cutting videos a little bit ago, and they're posted on the website if you're interested in potato cuts. And potatoes are a great thing to practice your knife skills on. One, you can do so much with them after you cut them up, but they're inexpensive and they're just a really good material, good shape and size to try out different cuts and techniques. So here we've got the strips, right? And if you're comfortable with having two pieces layered up, then that speeds things up a little bit. And we can just do that rocking motion. And again, across and through. All right. And we have the onions and garlic are starting to have a good aroma. And I'm going to go ahead and throw the potato and the carrot in there, the rest of the carrot. So here at this point, we just want to coat everything with that butter, give it a little head start before we add the beef. So right now we're going to add the salt and pepper. We're looking at a half teaspoon of salt and a quarter teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now, and then I did want to go over, so as I mentioned, in Cornwall, we've got one of the things that you can put in a Cornish pasty and should be in there to call it a Cornish pasty is rutabaga, sometimes called a Swede. Another really nice addition that would be real traditional is a parsnip. And parsnips are so good, aren't they? They're sweet, have a nice texture. So I did want to do the cut up the rutabaga just for because it's a little more unusual. You're not using a lot of rutabagas all the time in a whole bunch of recipes. So you just can stem or cut the root end off, and then we could let's see, what should we do? Let's go ahead and we'll peel it. So I'm just going to peel the nice purple skin off. And then let's go ahead and treat this like an onion, and we'll cut through that root end and then pop that root off, or I'm sorry, the stem end. And so it was the opposite of the onion. We cut the root end off and kept the stem end. So either way will work with the rutabaga. Now we can dice it. And again, if you want to layer it up a tad, that makes it go a little quicker. And you could use any root vegetables you like for this. Again, you're just looking for things that kind of cook at a similar rate, because after we make the filling, we'll create our pasties, put the filling in the dough, then it goes in the oven and it cooks a little more. So you just want everything to be cooking at the same sort of rate.
Sam, we had a question about the rutabaga or turnip. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
These are a root vegetable. Yeah, there's turnips, rutabagas, parsnips, and I think they're all a little bit interchangeable. They have a nice I want to say earthy flavor, but that is true. They're a root vegetable. They grow underground, and they do grow well in Oregon if you wanted to grow some. They're often you can roast them. It is one thing you can do with them. Steam them. But they're fun to work with. And you can mash them, and that I've mashed them before with a little cream and butter, and that's a really nice little cream, butter, salt, pepper. That's a nice way to enjoy a rutabaga, turnip, or parsnip, or all three together. But yeah, they're pretty neat. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the beef, huh? So I have a nice piece of beef here. All the Basics markets have a meat market, and we grow our own beef. So this is organic, raised on our own farms. It's USDA certified organic, so it's fed organic feed, and it eats organic grass. It's all Oregon raised on Oregon pastures, and it has the diet consisting of pasture grass, alfalfa, and corn silage. So that's corn that we grow and then let sit in the silage. They let it sit and sort of mature, and then the cows can digest it well. And so all their feed is grown locally, and then that's what they eat, and it makes a really beautiful piece of beef. So what I have here is a bottom round, and this is a good cut for pasty. But any cut you like, you know, or if you had some leftover, just some trim of something that would work. Top round also, you know, would work. Bottom round, chuck, uh, chuck roast, chuck steak, just a steak chopped up. But you're looking for like a pound or so of uh, of the beef. Now I'm going to grab a cutting board for the beef. And what I've got here is approximately 2 pounds. So I'm just going to cut this in half. And, I mean, I am not worried too much about weighing it, but you know, if you're just getting 1 pound, you can have them weigh it out at the butcher shop. So the veggies are getting a little bit tender here. And so that's good. I'm going to take the heat down a tad. And so on a cut like this, we have a little bit of a fat cap. And so you want to just trim that off. And in order to do that, I just run my blade of my knife down and sort of peel it at the same time. So you want a good sharp knife. Just peel that fat cap off. Okay, so now to get into this guy, what I'm going to do is slice it in approximately the depth of the cube that we're looking for, the dice. And with the beef, you know, you want to go a little bit small with it. And then this part, I think I'll just do strips. And I can cut each of these strips in half. So this is all dependent upon the, you know, the shape, the size and shape of what you're working with. With any of this stuff and meat, you know, you just want to adapt your technique to the material you're using. And this, you can see, is a really neat. We have some nice marbling in this, which just adds to the flavor, the overall flavor of the meat. Gives it a richness. That's all. You know, good, rich flavor there. And so, looking for a little bit of marbling is always a good idea. You know, and then you can take it from there as far as if you want a leaner cut or a richer cut. And so here I'm just going to cut more of these strips, and then I can cut across and get some dice. And we're just, again, you know, being aware of where my fingers are, giving it a good slice through the meat. And I'm going to go ahead and what I like to do is I'll put all my dice in a bowl and then coat it with the flour. And I didn't write that step in the recipe, but I probably should have. It would work. Also, it will work if you just put the beef in and brown it with your other ingredients here. And that's fine. But this is just sort of a neat trick. Like if it's kind of like when you're making stew, you do the same sort of thing. Like you'll have some seasonings and some flour, and you'll dredge your meat in it. And then when it hits the pan, it browns up, and as it releases liquid, that flour becomes kind of a thick sauce. And here we're going to be adding sauces as well. And so that will further loosen up the flour from the meat, but it's good to get that coating on there, I think. So that's the bonus step that you get for tuning in tonight. All right, this looks very nice, and I would definitely recommend using this. Is the brand of this, of our beef is Silver Sage Farms. And that's what you can look for in the Basics markets. And it's really, really good and fresh. Okay, so let us continue. Grab a clean knife. All right, so go ahead and dredge up the beef. And then we can get to putting some pasties together. So what we're going to do here is, like I mentioned, we just want to coat the beef with that flour. And then pop it in the skillet. You let this go for a few minutes. You want to let it get nice and brown. And because we're a little bit short on time, I'm going to go ahead and we'll kind of push it through. I have some filling already prepared that we can look at for forming the pasties. But if you're cooking along with me, you know, don't fret. You can have your filling cooking, and then you can watch me demo the construction of the pasties, and then do that when you're ready. So ideally, this will get nice and brown. So it would be like another 6 minutes or something, and it will starts to release the juices. And then we add our Worcestershire and our steak sauce. So if you have Lee and Perrins, that's the first commercial Worcestershire sauce. And Worcestershire sauce was invented in Worcester, which is a town in England. And it was invented at the request of a fellow who'd been traveling in India, and he tasted a sauce, and he wanted a couple of fellows to recreate it. But it's basically based on like a fermented fish sauce, and so it has anchovies often. You can find it if you're looking for a vegan version. There are vegan versions of the Worcestershire, and it gives just a ton of flavor. So we're going to add 3 tablespoons of the Worcestershire, and then 3 tablespoons of steak sauce. And I'm using A1, but any steak sauce you have or can get your hands on is good. HP is Houses of Parliament, and that would be your traditional British steak sauce. So if you can find HP steak sauce, that would be really good. And so what happens when you get your sauces in there, it starts to create some nice moisture. Gets things moving. And then to finish, we're going to finish with some cheddar cheese. And once again, I've got one of our own products I'm using here, and this is the Lulabelle's sharp cheddar, which it has real nice flavor for this. This is a white cheddar. So I have here a grated half a cup. So you kind of, you let your beef simmer in the sauce a bit. And really the beef, you can kind of cut it off when it's just cooked halfway through, because it's going to cook more in the oven, right? So you just want to take it to kind of medium rare here, and then throw your cheese in. And we're going to turn the heat off. And we just want that cheese to sort of coat and melt over everything. And then you can add some peas. And this is just a half a cup of frozen peas, semi-thawed. And they're going to thaw out real quick. And that's it. That's the beef filling. And this will make you 12 pasties. You use a half a cup per pasty, but let's go ahead and we'll look at that and make a few. All right, so that's sort of how that goes. Now, let's assemble some pasties. So I'm going to grab, I have some pasty dough chilled, and I made two versions, right? I made one with the lard, and I made just the pie dough version, and they're very, they're very similar. Once it bakes, you get that, like I mentioned, it's that little bit of sturdiness from the lard, but they'll both work very well. So let's go ahead and grab this one. So this is a half. I used half already and baked some off, which we'll look at in a second. So this will make 6 pasties. And so as with other, like the bao, when we made the bao, right, a similar technique here, where we're going to create the snake, and then we are going to cut it into 6 pieces, 12 if you're making a full batch. So I'm going to cut it in half, and then cut each of those half in thirds. Okay, and then I've got these guys I can turn into balls.
And Sam, while you're doing that,
Yeah.
Just wanted to let you know that Rosabelle wants to know that it looks delicious. And Anne has a question about, do you have any tips to make sure the filling does not become dry?
Yeah, just don't overcook it in the pan. You want to leave it a little bit loose there, but it should remain nice and loose, because if you don't dry it out in the pan and then it goes into the pastry, the pasty dough, it's going to be in that insulated environment as it bakes. It should be good, but you can kind of see, I don't know, you can hear the consistency, and so there's a little juice in there, and I think that's why I like to put the cheese in there, is it helps kind of keep it from drying out, having that little extra bit of fat. Okay, so I'm just rolling circles, right? And again, one more cool product that we have at Basics. We raise our own eggs and chickens, and both are available in the stores. But we have the eggs for an egg wash, and the egg wash is just 1 egg and 2 tablespoons of water that I whisk together with a fork, and it's handy for both sticking the pasty together when you're forming it, and also for glazing it a little bit to give it a nice color as it bakes. And again, to sort of protect the dough in the oven and create yet another layer of strength, right, as you're going down into that mine. Okay, so real quick, I have the 2 fillings, and I didn't get a lot of time to talk about the jackfruit filling, but it's really fun. I put this together using a can of jackfruit. Now, jackfruit is a tree that grows the largest fruit in the world. Some of these jackfruit can be up to 120 pounds, and often they're like 80 pounds. So that's a lot of food. But all you need is 1 can for this pasty recipe, and that jackfruit filling looks something like this. And so people, vegetarians, have been using jackfruit a lot for the texture, and it takes flavor really well. So it's kind of a nice meat substitute. You can get fresh jackfruit, and then to cook it, you steam it or boil it. The can is really handy because there are big seeds in the fresh stuff that are harder to work with. So you might consider the can has already been cooked and it's ready to go. And okay, so I might have overfilled that one a little bit, but I think I can work with it. So you can see I put the filling in the center. And then what I do is I kind of pull it back towards myself and create this little pocket, this little packet, this little ball. And then there's, you know, from here, it's handy to crimp. So a fork is always a good tool to have on hand when you're working with dough. So you can crimp like this. I could just leave it like that and bake it. I like to put them up on their end like this, and then like a football, create like a little football, and then pop them in. And that's kind of a cool design. And you can see here where you have your handle to hold on to and keep your food clean, right? Let's do another one. Oops, yes. Don't roll after you've applied your egg wash is what I just learned. Okay, so do another one. And this scoop is a half cup scoop. So this is a half cup of filling. This is the filling here. And I find it's very helpful to have plenty of flour on your hands when you're working with this dough. Okay, and then we'll fold it over and then just gently, and again, apply flour to your hands so you're not stuck, and then flour underneath, and just gently pull it towards yourself, and then create that nice ball. And then from here, crimp. You can do one of these, like when you do pie dough, just kind of make a rope around is another nice finish for a pasty. And then that makes a good thick handle as well. That's real tasty. Okay, so let's bake these off in 2 minutes, right? So I have, luckily, the magic of television on my side. So there's a couple styles there, you know, you could play with the shape, of course. These are some traditional ones and that work. So I have them on a baking sheet, and I have some parchment under here. I could just have lightly greased this baking sheet also. And then you have your oven preheated to 375 degrees. And we're going to just pop them in. And then we see what we have in about 25, 30 minutes. Depending on your oven, you know, it can be up to 35, 40 minutes. So I would definitely check them at 25 minutes, and you're looking for this sort of golden brown. You can see the egg wash gave them a real nice color. These are the veggie ones that I made right before class, and then these are the meat. So the meat ones have that lard, half lard dough, and then the veggie ones are all butter. And just feeling them, you know, like this one is a little sturdier, it's a little drier, and then this is a little more tender, the all butter one. So it's up to you. And then, as I mentioned before, you can do a completely vegan one and try out like an alternative butter and have a total vegan feel, or you could do an all lard one and go the other way. The choice is yours, but have fun with it. And thank you.
Question, Sam.
Oh, okay.
Someone would like to know if you should poke holes in the top of it before baking, and also just wanted to ask a little more about putting that egg wash on. Did you put it on before?
Yeah, sorry.
After you cook it?
Yeah, good point. So Good thought. Yes, I forgot the egg wash. So you'd put them on before you bake it. So let's rewind. And before I put them in the oven, I have egg wash, and we have this fancy pastry brush that we just acquired. It's a beauty, and you just lightly brush your egg wash on there, and you know, doesn't need a lot. You just want to put that on. Um, and then put it in the oven. So thank you for pointing that out. I got ahead of myself. Yeah, so then it would go in the oven, and like I said, check them at like 25 minutes, and then it may take up to 40 minutes.
So would you poke holes in them,
And
Sam?
then as far as the holes go, don't poke holes, because what will happen is that will release all those nice juices which are going to develop in there. It might cause them to dry out a little bit, and it could end up messing up your good crust. So you don't need to poke holes. You just leave them whole and do the brushing of the egg wash, and then pop them in the oven.
One of our viewers would like to ask if you could open a couple of them so we can see how the dough is flaky and what the inside looks like.
Oh, I would love to. Let's do it. Let me, I have a spoon cutting board here for just such a request. Let's look at one of each, huh? So we can let's look at these two. These two I did, they're similar styles. This is just a fork crimp, kind of like a turnover style, right? And this is the meat one. And then this is a veggie one. And this one I did that rope roll around and then crimped it. But real similar in shape, and of course size. Now the size thing is interesting because pasties, of course, can be much larger, and they often were originally much larger. But this sort of size pasty became fashionable like in Victorian times, and it became more of a snack type food than like a all-day meal for people who weren't, working in the mines and just needed a little snack with their tea. And I did have one of these with my tea this afternoon, and it was awesome. All right, so you can see this is the meat one here, and then this is the vegan one. And so this is sort of what you get. And these freeze really well before you bake them. You can freeze them. And in order to do that, you just go to I would not egg wash them if I was going to freeze them, but just leave the dough plain. Lay them out on a baking sheet like this, put them in your freezer, let them freeze, and then once they're frozen through, you could put them in a Ziploc bag or wrap them, and then they'll be good for like 6 months. And then when you're ready to eat them, just pull them out of the freezer and let them thaw a little bit, egg wash them and pop them in the oven. And then you can have pasties all the time without all this work, right? So you make pasties all day one day and then forget about it the rest of the next 6 months and just pull them out of your freezer. No, there's nothing like a real fresh pasty. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please come to some great upcoming online classes and continue with the happy cooking. Thanks.